Hello, everybody. All right, so we're coming down to the end of the week here. We're at Thursday now, so hopefully everybody's had a good week this week. Of course, we're gonna give people a chance to come in, give them a chance to get in here. So while we're waiting, I'll put some music on to take care of a couple of things, and then when I come back, we'll talk about what's on tap for tonight. Alrighty then. So yeah, we're just coming up on 2 minutes here. I'll just give it a few more minutes here, a minute or so. All right. So, anyways, as we just wait for more people show up here, let's see. So now we're coming up on 3 minutes. Probably a good time to start. Let's do one more thing here. Check out this. All right. Anyways. All right. All right. So now we have some people in here. All right. So as always, if you guys can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here, that'd be appreciated. Also, anything we talk about tonight grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. As we're coming up on 5 minutes here, so I'll go over real quickly what's on tap for tonight. So I'm going to go over a couple of articles from Bleeding Fool tonight. One of them actually came out yesterday. I was debating whether or not to do this because this is going to be probably a lengthy and serious article. So I don't know if some of you have heard, but somebody has decided to do an Anne Frank graphic novel, and apparently that has stirred up some controversy. We're going to go ahead and take a look at that, and then also Dynamite is helping to celebrate Red Sonja's 50th anniversary. I guess it's a comic anniversary, I guess. So we'll be looking at that as well. Also, of course, the wrestling wrap up. We got news from the WWE, AEW, and of course Impact Wrestling with their next pay per view coming up this Sunday. Also, this day in each history. So, without any further ado, why don't we go ahead and get started on the show here. Articles here. All right, so here we go. All right. Anne Frank's legacy trashed with sexually explicit graphic novel. Article by Avi Green, published April 12th, 2025. Okay, so I wonder what this is about. So I guess we'll take a look and see. Robert Spencer at TJ Media pointed to a truly atrocious attempt by leftists to frame conservatives for supposedly trying to censor a graphic novel about Holocaust victim Anne Frank, which appears to be written to suit the twisted leftist vision of LGBT ideology. Now, I've heard bits here and there. I've heard some bits here and there that people are now trying to say that Anne Frank, who I'm sure many of us either have read the novel The Diary of Anne Frank or have seen the movie. The story of tragedy set during World War II, and the trials and tribulations of the Frank family as they were trying to escape Nazi Germany to so they wouldn't have to deal with the Jewish persecution. I know there has supposedly been some movement, I guess, trying to convince everybody that Anne Frank may be some kind of LGBT icon. You're talking about a 12, 13, 14-year-old girl they're trying to put up as a LGBT icon, which I'm sure is controversial, especially in this day and age. So, anyways, let's go ahead and get in this article. So, leftists will tell you patriots are a bunch of book-burning neo-Nazis who are busy even now trying to control what people think by taking books out of the hands of our young people who are thirsting for knowledge. And so the headline of the Wednesday report from Tampa Bay's WFLA was downright ominous. Quote, Florida school district removes book about Anne Frank from libraries. Unquote. Heavens to Betsy! Even Anne Frank. Do these right-wingers want another Holocaust? Will they stop at nothing? But the truth, as is usually the case with establishment media reports, was quite a different matter. I wonder why. Could it be maybe the material in the book? Let's see if anybody. As I said, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to and I thank you for the like and the share, by the way. That helps out. Anyways, let's continue on here. Let's see what this has to say here. All right. WFLA's lead paragraph is just as misleading as its headline. Quote, a book about Anne Frank was removed from a Florida school library after a new policy was approved, unquote. What was removed was not her famous diary, but a graphic novel entitled Anne Frank's Diary, the graphic adaptation. Oh boy, wonder what that's supposed to imply. In this case, quote unquote, graphic is used in both senses of the word. I'm guessing what they're meaning by that, what Avi's meaning by that is graphic is both being used as both its denotative interpretation, its denotative meaning and its connotative interpretation. So I guess that's what he might be saying. Quote, in one graphic scene in the book, unquote, WFLA informs us, quote, Frank asked a friend to expose themselves to one another, unquote. And in another, quote, Frank walks along nude statues that are sexually explicit, unquote. The book also portrays Anne Frank as a budding lesbian. The caption on the page where she walks among the nude statues is, quote, I must admit, every time I see a female nude, I go into ecstasy. If only I had a girlfriend. Yeah, I could see that being somewhat problematic. Not, obviously, I know a lot of you are gonna have the hang up on what they're trying to pull here in terms of implying that this 12, 13, 14-year-old girl is sitting there trying to figure out if she's straight or gay. I think, considering the time, considering the circumstances of when Anne Frank lived, I think she'd have a lot more on her mind than whether or not she was going to end up straight or gay. Again, you take such a situation like that, and again, it seems like it's another example of Hollywood trying to use an established character, or in this case, an established real person, to push a narrative. It was this marginally pornographic book that, quote, was removed from school libraries in Indian River County, unquote, after complaints from a group of parents. Yes, I could see that, again, that that particular scene could be considered as Avi put it here, marginally pornographic. And yes, the parents would have a right to complain about those books being accessible to their kids. It does almost seem like a grooming situation. But again, not just that aspect of it. I know that's the part that I think everybody's going to be. I know that's the part that everybody's going to be raising the red flags on. But writing a graphic novel about, I have a problem just with the whole issue of them trying to use this situation as a form of propaganda, but also you would think, as I said earlier, I think Anne Frank would have had a lot more on her mind than whether or not she was straight or gay. You know, like the fact that, and on from another logical sense too, I don't think that would make a whole lot of sense. It should be exploring that anyways, because of course, as everybody knows, the Nazi Germans, they not only they hated Jews, they hated blacks, they even hated the LGBT. Okay, um, you know, so so now it's like another check mark, that another target she's putting on her back. I don't think she'd be doing that. I really don't. You know, um, anyways, the parents group in question, Moms for Liberty, of course, has no problem with the real Anne Frank book. And what they're referring to is, of course, the book that we all grew up on, The Diary of Anne Frank. Jennifer, now, mind you, the group has gotten some heat because this is not the only book that they went after in this Florida school district either. Because I do know that Hero Hay also reported earlier today. I saw a video from Hero Hay earlier where they also got the Assassination Classroom manga, um, you know, taken off the school library's shelves as well for basically to suggest, obviously, if anybody who knows about the manga or anime of Assassination Classroom, the plot is about basically a high school class being, or that might be junior high class being trained to kill their teacher, to assassinate their teacher, to save the world. So I could see parents having somewhat of an issue like that because they just feel like that be feeding into the whole. It's kind of funny how anytime there's a school shooting, it's all, oh, we got to take the guns away from everybody. When that is proven not to really work. When there's more of a mental health issue involved, and if anything, the thing with Assassination Classroom, some parents might help to reinforce the idea that it's okay to go shoot up schools. So I can see their point on that. Whether or not I actually agree, but then Assassination Classroom and The Diary of Anne Frank, obviously two very different types of books. So, we'll read on a little bit more here. Let's see. And again, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to like and share. So Jennifer Pippin, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Also, like and share if you haven't already. Help see if we can get some more friendly people in here. Anyways, Jennifer Pippin of Moms for Liberty explained, quote, "We think true history absolutely needs to be taught. The Holocaust, the Anne Frank Diary," unquote. And Dr. Akira Shafty of the Indian River County School District pointed out that the real Diary of Anne Frank is still available in school libraries there. All right, so Kristen Maddox, a spokesperson for the district, said that that the graphic novel, on the other hand, was quote, not age appropriate, unquote. In other words, what they're basically saying there is they don't feel that that this particular graphic novel should basically. I think this is middle school where I think this is a middle school where they're it was removed from school libraries in Indian River County. How to complain? Okay, but my again, I don't know if these books, if they were in the libraries of, they were in the libraries of a elementary or middle school. I could see the parents having an issue. High school, maybe high schoolers could handle it, but better safe than sorry. Particularly maybe juniors and seniors. Now of course a lot of seniors are 18; they're already of legal age anyway. So, but anyways, um, she added, "quote That's not the actual diary of Anne Frank. It's a fictional novel that has some inappropriate content in it." Unquote. hmm It was removed, she said, "quote due to minimization of the Holocaust." Unquote. Again, I could see the issue here because it's kind of similar to the point I was making earlier. Again, I think considering the circumstances, I don't really think Anne Frank would have been thinking about whether or not she was straight or gay, okay, or lesbian, or however you want to say it. You know, I think that was one of the things that would have probably been, again, considering the circumstances, you know, um, I don't think she was thinking about whether or not she wanted to, as the Bible would put it, whether or not she wanted to lie with a man or lie with a woman. Okay? Um, Echoing Shafty, Maddox concluded, quote, library spaces in the district currently have factual accounts of the Diary of Anne Frank, unquote. Now this is Avi talking, so I guess the previous thing was from from the part of the news article that he's referring to. So, from what I know of the writer behind this graphic novel, Ari Folman, he's a leftist who once produced an animated quote unquote documentary titled Waltz with Bashir about the 1982 Lebanon War. And through it, told exactly the kind of angle the far left would want to hear, including the leftist New York Times. All right. And then here's an excerpt from from an article, I guess. Um, all right. Ari Folman has brilliant blue eyes and a weathered face. This is a face you see in, quote, Waltz with Bashir, unquote, his animated feature documentary. The Israeli filmmaker, even at 45, though I guess he was, looks like a man who could stop bullets, but he could not. The story he tells and the cinematic um, style he tells it in emerged from the hell of war. In 1982, the Israeli incursion into Lebanon had led to the massacre of Palestinian refugees at the Sabra and Shatila. I guess this is from the New York Times article, I guess. Camps. The Israeli troops stood by and let the uh, phalangist, Christian phalangist militia kill off. Yeah, again, I wonder what that's supposed to mean. militia kill off the Palestinians in the camps. The film that Fulman made is about this trauma. It is the story of a generation, the early 80s teenage Israelis who left their rock and roll dance halls, roared off to war without a pang, and then resumed their lives. So here they're taking a one-sided position and narrative that was hostile to Christians and made it look like they were the aggressors, not the Islamo-fascist of the Hezbollah, who persecuted Christian inhabitants of now largely devastated country. Um, I guess we're back to Avi now. And if you haven't already, if you can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will do my best to answer those questions. So Hezbollah, which means Party of God in Arabic, is a terrorist organization based in Lebanon. The Shiite Muslim group, which is backed by Iran and Syria, advocates the destruction of Israel as a primary goal. Now, anybody who is familiar with their biblical history here should know that Muslims and the Muslim and Jewish people have basically been at war ever since the time of Isaac and Ishmael. Okay, going all that far back. Isaac is the one that the Judeo-Christian line went down. Ishmael was the one that the Muslim line went down. So, its first manifesto, released in 1985, called for the establishment of an Islamic Republic in Lebanon, and stated the following with respect to the Jewish state. Quote, our struggle will end only when this entity, Israel, is obliterated. The group emerged during the Lebanese Civil War after Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982. Here's a brief history of what happened. During the 1970s, the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, carried out hundreds of attacks into Israel from Lebanon. And as we know, again, Israel has been at war with its surrounding neighbors, going back millennia, basically. You see it all throughout Joshua and, throughout much of the Old Testament, starting from Joshua throughout much of the Old Testament. Meanwhile, the new wave of Palestinian fighters who were recruited to Lebanon by the PLO upset the balance between Muslims and Christians in the country. This led to a civil war there in 1975. Lebanese Christians looked to Israel for support in confronting the PLO's growing presence, and ultimately hoped to drive them out of the country. Israel, hoping to stop the terrorist attacks coming from the PLO, began backing the Christians in the Lebanese Civil War. So basically, what Avi's saying here is that it was actually the Muslims who were the aggressor here, not the Christians. Albeit this guy Ari Fulman would try to make it sound like the Judeo-Christians were the aggressor. So, in 1982, Israel, under the leadership of Prime Minister Menachem Begin, invaded Lebanon, allying with the Christians against the Syrian-backed PLO. This began the 1982 Lebanon War, also known as the First Lebanon War, or quote-unquote Shalom HaGalil, in parentheses here, peace of the Galilee in Israel. So that was so. Hey, JR. Islam was invented in 600 AD, 1500 years after early biblical history. The massacre of Shatila included the murder of old men, women, and children by an army under the protection of the Israeli army. Yes, but a lot of this goes even back further, as I said, to Isaac and Ishmael. JR. Okay, yeah, Islam probably came long after that, but but it was rooted in they much like how Christianity was born out of Judaism, Islam was probably born out of Muslims, Muslimism. So it's no surprise the New York Times would blur this history, and Fulman regrettably provided them with exactly the kind of cunning, liberal, anti-war voice they wanted to hear, which is equally reprehensible. Today, of course, the war in Lebanon was sadly lost since, and now we've still got considerable problems with the barbarism caused by the Hezbollah. And all the while, men like Fulman couldn't care less what happens to what's left of their Christian populace, which such leftists view as expendable compared to the religion of peace by contrast. Now, I know we're talking a lot about Judeo-Christian versus Islamic Muslim, but the main part of the article here is the reason we got into that is because the writer of a graphic novel about Anne Frank that was pulled from some Florida school libraries in one particular district. And then Fulman has the gall to produce something which sadly seems motivated by PC mentality, telling exactly what liberals would want to hear in a very gross manner. Seriously, that's appalling. Now, if it matters, I also found this JTA article on Israel National News about the topic, which states, this is from the JTA, I guess, Jewish Television Agency, I guess, on Israel National News. The graphic novel adaptation of the diary was released in 2018. So if Fulman was 45 at the time, man, he would have been born in 1973. He'd probably be 50 now. With the full authorization of the Anne Frank fonts, adapted by Israeli filmmaker Ari Fulman and illustrator David Polonsky, and intended for young readers. The book compresses Frank's actual diary entries into a condensed version of her true story. While it does contain some invented dialogue and surrealist scenes, reproductions of Frank's actual diary in the book um, I guess it's supposed to be hew to her exact words. The graphic novel has attracted some scrutiny by reproducing passages of Frank's diary that had been edited out of its original Dutch publication in 1947. Diary was first published in English in 1952. Those passages relate Frank's latent feelings of attractiveness toward another girl and her description of her own genitalia. Anne's father, Otto Frank, restored the former passage for the book's 1952 English edition, while the latter was not restored to the diary until the 1980s. Another Florida parent in a different school district has told JTA they filed a request to remove the graphic adaptation because of objections to these passages. Yeah, I still don't see how making that a focus of a book, one, is really appropriate to the age group. I mean, basically, the point that was made earlier in the article here rings true to me. It's like they do seem to be minimizing the Holocaust in doing this by trying to focus on Anne Frank's exploration of sexual orientation. You know. Anyways, I gotta put some more light on in here, so I'll be right back. I'm gonna put on some music while I'm gone. All right, so let's get back to this. Whether or not this is accurate, and Frank did develop lesbian attraction, problem is that when somebody like Fullman produces the kind of material they admit is surreal and perverse, written in terms that would suit a leftist agenda as practiced today, that's why the whole graphic novel comes off as more of an embarrassment. Also note how the JTA doesn't question whether the surreal ingredients are inappropriate given the real life subject material it's allegedly based on, and whether it comes off more as crude and vulgar than appropriate for children. I looked at some of the comments available so far on the article in their open web program, and people say, for example, schools have been pushing soft porn and quote unquote free love on high school kids since the late 60s. I had genitalia when I was a young girl too, but it was not something that was discussed in public. You know, there are such things as respect and discretion. And then, indeed, I would think that Anne Frank would be utterly mortified to know such passages were made public. I'd have to kind of agree with that. I mean, she she's a 13, 14-year-old girl, and you're putting basically her sexuality, her naked body on full display for everybody through the words you're writing. Yeah, talk about child abuse. Just because she wrote it down doesn't mean she meant the world at large to read it. It's a loss of dignity for someone who has everything else taken away. Now, granted, and let's all remind what this is actually originally based on too. Remember, the original book is called The Diary of Anne Frank. So if you really think about it, at least from her point of view, none of this was ever meant to be made public. This was a young girl writing in her diary her own private thoughts, her own private perceptions on what was going on around her. She probably never had any intention of having any of it out. Now, granted, they did end up, printing it and publishing it because, and as noted earlier in the article, they edited out some of the more graphic aspects of it. There was a lot, there was still a lot of pertinent information, pertinent perspectives you can get in terms of like how she and her family were handling, being chased down by the Nazis, trying to survive in such a hostile environment, those aspects, made it to, but again, even in the Dutch publication, they edited out some of the more, quote unquote, graphic aspects. And also, I assume that she would not have wanted any of it made public. Again, whoever showed this basically just is saying the same point I just made. A young girl's diary is something very special, very personal and private. The way Fullman and Polanski made use of it is unforgivable. Yeah, I in this day of victimhood, in this day of Me Too and all that, these these guys are really take the cake here. Yeah, that comment, that latest comment, was basically the exact point I was making. This is a young girl's diary. She probably didn't want any of it made public. So, yeah. From what's been explained about it by better sources, it does sound pretty forced, and that's the problem. A writer at the American Thinker, who's a member of Moms for Liberty, made some vital points. What's really going on and why the graphic novel ends up disrespecting Frank's memory. This is the writer from the American Thinker. At my blog, I've written about the way in which the left is co-opting Anne Frank for its own ends. Again, a point I made earlier. This post sums up what the left has been doing to Anne Frank's legacy, which is to erase her Jewishness and attack Israel. Had Anne Frank and her family made it to British Mandate Palestine, the only refuge in the world for Jews, they would have survived World War II. The latest use to which leftists have put Anne Frank is to place her in the service of the gay pride movement. Thus, in Anne Frank's diary, the graphic adaptation, some illustrations focus on Anne's nascent sexuality, providing truly graphic images of Anne viewing sexually explicit nude statues or focusing on her appreciation for the nude female body. You know, now you don't necessarily have to be a lesbian to do. I mean, there can be some very narcissistic women out there who love their own body. Um, and of course, many women, have an appreciation of their body, in the way it can attract men. So, these concepts were in Anne's unexpert. These concepts were in Anne's unexpurgated diary, but they were also the ruminations of a precocious young woman from a European progressive household by the standards of the day, who clearly wrote her diary with an eye to future publication and was experimenting with ideas. I don't that aspect. I don't really think. Again, I don't really think she had any thoughts of. Again, this is her diary. Okay, she may have had thoughts about publishing something, but I don't think it was her diary. Okay. She may have been using her diary to explore like different writing styles and all that. That may be the case, but do I really think she, as a 12, 13, 14-year-old girl, she was thinking of putting this out there for the world to see? I don't think so. I really don't. Diaries, especially those of young girls, are very personal and very private, and as far as I know, most young girls who do write in diaries don't intend them to be made public. Of course, I don't even know if any of them actually write in a diary nowadays because, of course, we have computers and all that. But that's another story for another day. Mon for Liberty, in parentheses, a group to which I belong in South Carolina, wasn't protesting Anne Frank on her diary. The organization and its members were protesting the graphic novelization of her diary. That is, cherry-picked rendition. That is, a cherry some of Anne's words and provided illustrations from the imaginations of Ari Folman and David Polanski. Indeed, when you go to the Amazon page for the book, Anne Frank is designated not as the book's author, but as a quote-unquote contributor. This is a comic book, not Anne Frank's diary. And Hart has acknowledged that it's quote-unquote edgy. And then going back, I guess, to Avi here. I recall that Folman, and maybe Polanski too, also did an animated film 2 years back titled quote-unquote, Where is Anne Frank? Which appears to have fishy content as this movie marker review signals. All right. So here's a quote from. So there are concerns about whether the combination of animation and magic realism is the most suitable medium to convey the emotional turmoil of a historical figure. Through Hearts to Hearts with Kitty, Anne pours her heart about her frustration with the war, not to mention the horror experienced by Jews. Amid her growing annoyance, she paints an idealist picture of her life where boys are infatuated with her, and screen legends such as Clark Gable lead a charge against the Nazis. There are times Frank comes across as bratish, but her annoyance highlights a lack of fear in her voice. So her trepidation occasionally feels unjustified. It is possible that she is hiding her fears from Kitty to convey a simpler, idealistic world full of imagination and color, which further supports the film's fantastical narrative around an imaginary figure, but subsequently steers the limelight away from Frank's legacy. In fact, Where is Anne Frank does not provide enough context about Frank's significance. Throughout the film, Kitty sees landmarks, streets, and museums, and even a statue named and dedicated to Frank. But the film doesn't exactly say why she is famous. In Kitty's eyes, she doesn't see a famous figure. All she sees is her friend and her only link to the world. So, upon watching a play about Anne, she is understandably protective of her friend's legacy and especially her diary. Fullman tries to address this through Kitty's growing involvement with illegal immigrants, as she sees that their struggles echo those experienced by Anne. Oh boy. However, this eventually caves into uninspiring cliches, not to mention a half baked conclusion. Hmm. Yeah. So that was from I guess, a reviewer. Wow, we're already at the. Maybe I should have just done. I didn't even, maybe I should have just done this one story. Well, I guess I can because, what's this? Did Fullman exploit the material for a modern day allusion to illegal immigration? That sounds like it, which is not the same as persecuted refugees. Mm-hmm. Albeit, according to the left, it is. That's just what. Will it turn out he also condones Islamo-fascist flooding Europe at the expense of all innocents and ignores deliberately or otherwise Islam's connections with National Socialists during World War II? According to this page, the film was done in partnership with UNESCO, a division of the global outfit that's hugely anti-Israeli, and that's telling quite a bit too. Also, is quote unquote magic realism suitable for this kind of product? Hardly. And to think Fullman would also pander to LGBT ideology in the graphic novel he co-authored with Polanski. There have regrettably been all sorts of such movements that have tried to hijack and appropriate other people's tragedies to suit their own warped beliefs and agendas. And that's done far more harm than good. It's hugely disappointing, which I'd agree with. I mean, Anne Frank is just the latest victim in that. We've kind of seen it here in our country with Martin Luther King doing the African American movements too. You know, people at times have tried to hijack that. In the end, what's really grating about Fullman's projects is that he sounds like the kind of person who's overly obsessed with Frank, to the point that he'd run the gauntlet of desecrating her memory for the sake of pandering to leftist ideologies. And it goes without saying, men like him never seem to care about the plight of Jews in Islamic-led countries in the past. And if such leftists are going to be so selective about what issues they take up, is it any wonder they're unsuited to deal with the topics they already are? Yeah. I almost get the impression that this guy Fullman, okay, desecrating her legacy is not the only thing the dude wants to probably desecrate. I'll leave you all to interpret that as you will. But, anyways, Yeah, and I know we'll go over an hour today just because this one article. I knew it was going to take a while. I just didn't know it was going to take this long. We're already at 55 minutes, so we're going to probably go a little over an hour today. Then I'm going to try to blast through the second article, then really blast through the rest. I'm going to try to blast through the rest of the show here because we're already, I've been trying to make these about an hour, and the second time already this month that they made, got over it. That it's going to be over an hour. So, anyways, Dynamite celebrates Red Sonja's 50th anniversary with new series. Article by Chris Braley published earlier today. So there's a cover to Red Sonja. So Red Sonja is roaring into a brand new ongoing series for the Hallmark celebration of 50 fantastic years across comics, film, and beyond. First issue will be on sale this July 19th, coinciding with San Diego Comic Con. All right. And there's some images there. Critically acclaimed writer Torum Groenbeck is bringing her trademark flair for powerful women and weapon-wielding heroes, Thor, Valkyrie, to the Hykanian heroine for an exciting new era. Initially working closely alongside Eisner-winning writer Jason Aaron on his iconic Thor and recent Punisher stories, Torin has continued to excite fans as one of the most thrilling rising writers in comics. As fans head toward a hotly anticipated blockbuster film, this 50th um, anniversary series sets out to both celebrate the storied legacy of the character and launch the new era for the next 50 years and beyond. Oh, there she is right there. And as I recall in the movies, I think Brigitte Nielsen um, portrayed Red Sonja, as I recall. Yeah. Hmm. Quote, growing up in Norway, I was raised on mythology and stories, and it sometimes feels like it has all led up to the work I'm doing now, unquote, said writer Torun uh, Kronbeck. Quote, badass, complex women are a pillar of our lore, and there are few things I enjoy as much as writing them. Red Sonja is a legend. She is a sword wielding menace I dreamt about growing up, not only because um, she is capable, but because she is allowed to be vulnerable. Unquote. Oh, look at that! There's some graphic graphic feature for you right there. Ay ay ay. Ronbeck is joined on the series by fan favorite illustrator Walter Giovanni. His contributions to the franchise go back to 2007, nearly to the beginning of Dynamite's publishing of Sonya. Through collaborations and stories like Gail Simone's lauded run "The Price of Blood," the Prophecy event, and crossovers with other legendary figures like Tarzan, Giovanni has staked his claim as a definitive modern artist for the character. The combination of Groenbeck and Giovanni, alongside colorist Omi Remalante Jr. and letterer Simon Boland, um, will be the perfect creative team both for readers who have never checked out Red Sonja and for those who've been fans for decades. Best-selling #1 is solicited in Diamond Comic Distributors' May 2023 previews catalog, the premier source of merchandise for the comic book specialty market, and slated for release in July 2023. So there we go. All right, so we did get through that pretty quickly there. All righty then. So now we're going to get right into the wrestling wrap up, as it were. So first off, let's see. Actually, there wasn't really a whole lot. I don't think there was a whole lot in terms of WWE news today. It came out too much today because other things going on that were probably of more newsworthy. Let's see. Yeah. Actually, the only thing they did talk about, they did mention why. So, albeit it has not been signed yet, apparently they are looking to sign a match between Cody Rhodes and Brock Lesnar for a Backlash at the end of the month here. So you might want to stay tuned for that. Aside from that, on the AEW front, last night's Dynamite, of course. Did we? I guess we did. Last night's Dynamite had some surprising things, including the return of Jeff Hardy. But the results are, let's see. Darby Allin defeated Swerve Strickland to start off the night. Powerhouse Hobbs had a very, very quick victory over Silas King, only for it to go into a segment where Wardlow made his return to AEW by completely trashing a customized car of Powerhouse's with a forklift. Led to them getting into the fight, which also set up a match for next week's Dynamite between Powerhouse Hobbs and Wardlow for the TNT title. Orange Cassidy retained the international title over Buddy Matthews. The Blackpool Combat Club defeated Brandon Cutler and Michael Nakazawa in what they were hoping would be kind of the stamp on putting an end to the Elite, only to find that they were going to be confronted by the Elite as Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks came in and cleaned house, saving their two associates. Ruby Soho and Tony Storm of the Outcast defeated Riho and Sky Blue. In post-match, once again, the Outcast trying to do their NWO impersonation. They end up marking Riho with an L on her chest, only for Jamie Hayter and then Britt Baker to come out and make the save. And then in the main event, Chris Jericho, with help from Daniel Garcia and Swerve Strickland, defeated Keith Lee, and this, of course, was used to set up for future matches, probably between Lee and Swerve, Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland, in a renewal of their rivalry. And then after the match, of course, Cole came out to console Keith Lee, following the events of what happened last week, which looks like setting up a feud between Adam Cole and Chris Jericho now. Also happening on last night's Dynamite, Sting made his return as he came out as Darby Allin was in the ring Darby Allin was in the ring with MJF, as MJF had come out to get in Darby's face. Sting came out to explain why he was backing Darby. explaining how he knows that his career is winding down, and he's explaining why he's passing the torch. As Sting would always say, it's showtime, but for him, Sting was indicating showtime for him, for Sting, is coming to an end, whereas for Darby Allin, it's just beginning. And as I mentioned earlier, Jeff Hardy made a return during a segment in which Ethan Page was confronting Matt Hardy and Isaiah Cassidy as to why Matt Hardy hit Ian Page with the FTW belt, causing him the victory last week over Hook. And then Matt Hardy explained to him that he put it into the contract that if and because Ethan did not read the fine print apparently, put into the contract that if Ethan lost, Matt would get a shot to basically break the contract of getting the contract out of as everybody knows, Ethan Page had control of the contracts of Matt Hardy and Private Party, Hardy Party as they're collectively known. During the match, of course, Matt and during the segment, Matt and Isaiah were about to confront Ethan when the rest of the firm that's still not injured right now, Big Bill and Lee Moriarty coming down 3-on-2, and then Hook came out to help out Hardy Party, only to be chokeslammed by, and then the returning Jeff Hardy came in and cleaned house. So that's all that's happening in AEW. Let's see now. Now, a couple other news items, of course. So this Sunday, Impact Wrestling is going to have its Rebellion pay-per-view. Now, some changes have had to be made because of injuries. Josh Alexander had recently had to have surgery on a torn tricep, at which he had to relinquish the Impact World title. It's still in question of whether or not Mickie James will be able to defend the Knockouts title, as she's suffering from broken ribs, and it's just a question of whether or not she's going to get cleared for this Sunday. So here's the card for this Sunday as of right now. For the vacated Impact World title, it will be Steve Maclin taking on Kushida. Maclin had won the right to face Josh Alexander's number one contender by winning a 4-way. I believe it was at Sacrifice. Actually, no, it may have been No Surrender. Whichever one of the two. The Knockouts World title will be on the line as well. Right now, it's still slated to be Jordynne Grace, who was still owed her contractual rematch, and Deonna Purrazzo, who won a 4-way to earn a 4-way at the most recent pay-per-view here. Okay, so Sacrifice is the most recent one. No Surrender was before it. So, if she is cleared, she is medically cleared, Mickie James will also be part of that match. It will be a 3-way for the Knockouts World title. So we're just still waiting on that. And the women's title is actually going to be the main event. In a hardcore war match, this is some kind of hardcore battle between five-member teams, between Team Bully and Team Dreamer. So Team Bully, captained by Bully Ray, will have the tag team Good Hands of Jason Hodge and John Schuyler, Kenny King and Masha Slamovich, taking on Team Dreamer, captained, of course, by Tommy Dreamer, with members Bhupinder Gujar, Frankie Kazarian, Killer Kelly, and Yuya Uemura. For the Impact World Tag Team titles, the Bullet Club members Ace Austin and Chris Bay, were the current champions, defend against Motor City Machine Guns in an Ultimate X match. For those of you who don't know what an Ultimate X match is, basically it's a match in which two cables are hooked over the ring, forming an X, and then they have an X up there. And the first person or team to go up and grab the X wins the match. Well, normally it's an X, but in this case it's going to be for the titles. So it's kind of similar to a ladder match where the title is hung up, but in this case, instead of a ladders being involved, you have cables. It's an innovation that, of course, now known as Impact of TNA, originally had from years ago. In a 6-man tag match, the design members of Diener, Angels, and Cone, with Sami Callihan in the corner, take on the Director of Authority, Santino Marella, Digital Media Champion Joe Hendry, and Dirty Dango in a Impact X Division title elimination match. Trey Miguel takes on Jonathan Gresham and Mike Bailey. Now Gresham and Bailey have been at war with each other recently. They have mutual respect for each other. Their latest match was to see who would be the number one contender to go after Trey Miguel. Miguel interfered in the match, causing it to be a no contest, I recall. And so it was made into elimination match, a 3-way elimination match. The Knockouts Tag Team titles will be on the line as the new champions of the Coven, Kylan King and Taylor Wilde, take on former champs, the Death Dolls of Jessica and Rosemary. And the opening match, it looks like, will be a Last Rites match. I have no idea what that is. That might be some kind of death match between PCO and Eddie Edwards, as Eddie Edwards looks to once and for all, quote unquote, bury his past with by defeating PCO. But I think PCO has other ideas. And one last bit of wrestling news here. This is more general than anything else. But Vicky Guerrero, who recently was released, whose contract with AEW recently expired. She's no longer with AEW, of course. Recently had come under attack from her own daughter, Sherilyn. Well, depending upon what you choose to believe about the stories, as her daughter Sherilyn had accused Vicky's current husband, Chris Benson, former Major League Baseball player, of sexually assaulting her on a cruise. Well, Vicky Benson, well, her real name now is Vicky Benson, of course, but known to the wrestling world as Vicky Guerrero, is basically taking Sherilyn to court. I would believe over defamation here. Now, in all this, her older sister Shaul Guerrero, as well as her uncle Chavo Guerrero Jr., have taken Sherilyn's side. Vicky, but as I said, Vicky is filing a lawsuit against Sherilyn. So we'll just have to wait and see how that. I first reported on this story, of course, last week when it was revealed that Sherilyn had made accusations against her stepfather. So with that, let's start to wrap things up here as we will go ahead and so today being Thursday, April 13th, 2023. Let's take a look back at this day in each history. History! So, anyways, 98, 2011, 2018, and 2013. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at back at this day in each history. So, first off, oh, why did I do that? I've been doing that a lot lately. Anyways, I gotta start. All right, so let's see. First off, we're gonna head back 25 years ago today, as on this date, 25 years ago today, WCW held its Monday Nitro event from the Target Center in Minneapolis. Now, as you all know, the Target Center was, well, no, actually, it was Mall of America. I'm sorry. So, anyways, in the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota, here, WCW held its Monday Nitro event. The main event saw Sting retain the world heavyweight retain the world of the WCW World Heavyweight title in a DQ loss to Kevin Nash. Let's see. Diamond Dallas Page retained the United States Heavyweight Championship over Rage, one half of High Voltage. Booker T retained the World Television title over La Parka in about 3.5 minutes. Kurt Hennig, with his father, Larry Hennig, Rick Rude, and Rick Rude Sr., defeated Yuji Nagata in 253. Goldberg continued his winning ways by defeating Rocco Rock. Let's see. Chris Jericho had retained the World Cruiserweight Championship over Super Kahlo. And the match started off with Scott Steiner defeating Finley. So on this date, 25 years ago today, WCW held its Monday Nitro event from the Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So, moving on to the next piece of niche history. Going to 2011 now. On this date in 2011, the 710th issue of Superman went on sale on this date back in 2011. This is volume 1 of Superman, mind you. This is the same Superman that started all the way back in 1939. So this is volume 1. Volume 1 was winding down. They'd only have 4 more issues after this. On this date, the 710th issue of Superman went on sale on this date. Part 8 of the Grounded story. Written by J. Michael Straczynski and Chris Robertson. Penciled by Eddie Barros. Travel Foreman. Let's see, inked by J.P. Meyer and John Dell III. Lettered by John J. Hill. With coloring by Rod Reese and Dave McKeag. On this date, back in 2011, 12 years ago today, 710th issue of Superman went on sale on this date. So let's see. Getting ready to move on to the next piece in each history here. On this date in 2013, the The Japanese anime film Ora Koga Maryun's Last War was released on this date back in 2013, 10 years ago today. 10 years ago today, AIC Asta's anime film, Ora Koga Maryun's Last War, was released in Japanese theaters on this date back in 2013, 10 years ago today. And finally, um, on this date 5 years ago today, the 2018 computer animated adventure film Sergeant Stubby, An American Hero, produced and distributed by Fun Academy. Produced in part by Fun Academy Media Group and distributed by Fun Academy Motion Pictures. On this date, made its widespread United States and Canada premiere on this date back in 2018. The movie centers on the real life of Sergeant Stubby, a stray Boston Terrier. Directed and co-written by Richard Lanning, featuring the voices of Logan Lerman, Helena Bonham Carter, and Gerard Depardieu. The film was released in North America. It received yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, this follows the real life of Sergeant Stubby, who was a puppy, who was involved in World War II, World War One, actually. So, with that, guys, I thank everybody for being here. Hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. I know we hit upon a pretty, somewhat, some might say, a pretty controversial story with the Anne Frank graphic novel. Don't forget, of course, tomorrow night is our historical comic retrospect. Rick Piper will be joining me from Cross Comics. We'll be starting our coverage of October 1939, and we'll be starting with DC. Of course, we'll be we'll be reading from like Detective Comics Volume 1, number 33. Let's see, Action Comics Volume 1, number 19. Adventure Comics, I think Volume 1, number 44, I believe. And then maybe, depending upon the time, of course, All American Comics. So, anyways, I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.